The City Without Commitments by Omar Kewellar. In 1989, I was living in Burlington, Vermont, a picturesque city that nevertheless failed to lighten the heavy burden I carried on my shoulders. I worked in a university laboratory, immersed in research on the meaning and importance of nighttime dreams, a subject that had fascinated me since I was young. Every day I spent hours analyzing brainwave patterns and jotting down theories that tried to unravel the mysteries of sleep. But despite my passion for the work, my life was far from satisfying. Stress consumed me like a shadow that grew longer with each passing day. My marriage was falling apart. My wife and I barely exchanged words that weren't cold or loaded with reproaches. What had once been love had turned into an exhausting routine filled with awkward silences and misunderstandings. Every night when I returned home, it felt as though I were stepping onto a battlefield where no one ever won. I tried to stay calm, but arguments were inevitable, and each one left a deeper wound in our relationship. I kept wondering how we had reached that point, but I found no answers. My 17-year-old daughter was another source of worry. The rebellious teenager living under my roof felt like a stranger. The eyes that once looked at me with admiration now reflected only contempt or indifference. Every attempt to reach out to her ended with slammed doors and curt replies. I wanted to understand her, to help her, but I didn't know how. I felt like an intruder in her world, unable to cross the chasm that separated us. Her silence hurt more than any shout ever could. On top of that, my father, who was approaching 80, was in fragile health. His frailty forced me to divide my time between work, the tensions at home, and visits to the hospital or his small apartment. Taking care of him was a duty I fulfilled with love, but also with exhaustion. Every time I saw him, more frail and more confused, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It hurt to see him like that, and at the same time the responsibility of being his only support wore me down. Life seemed to keep piling problems on me without ever giving me a break. Things were no better in the laboratory. My colleagues, if I could even call them that, were distant and in many cases openly rude. Conversations were superficial, full of sarcasm and veiled criticism. No one seemed interested in my ideas about dreams, and my attempts to collaborate were met with indifference or mockery. I felt isolated, as though I were trapped in a place where I didn't belong. The laboratory, which should have been my refuge, had become yet another battlefield. I was fed up with people, with their hurtful words, their expectations, their demands. Every interaction drained me further, as though they were slowly siphoning away my energy. I dreamed of escaping, of finding a place where I could be alone, free from the weight of human relationships. But in reality, there was no escape. Life marched on relentlessly, and I felt caught on a wheel that never stopped turning. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, I stayed working late in the laboratory. The university was silent, and the hum of the equipment was the only sound keeping me company. I was reviewing some notes when, without realizing it, exhaustion overpowered me. I rested my head on the desk, and in an instant I fell into a deep sleep, more vivid than any I had ever experienced. I awoke, or at least I thought I did, in a city unlike anything I had ever seen. The architecture was breathtaking, a blend of elegance and delirium. Crystal towers rose toward a turquoise sky, with shapes that defied logic, impossible curves, arches that seemed to float, buildings that changed color with the light. Every detail was exquisite, as though a divine artist had designed each quarter with infinite care. I walked along cobblestone streets that shimmered as if they were made of pearls. Delicate, lace-like bridges crossed rivers of crystalline water that mirrored the city's splendor. There was no noise, only a serene silence that wrapped around me like an embrace. For the first time in a long while, I felt a peace I couldn't explain. My heart, always racing from stress, beat calmly. The most wonderful thing was that the city was completely deserted. There wasn't a single person around. No voices, no footsteps, no glances. Just me, the city, and the silence. The absence of people didn't distress me. On the contrary, it set me free. There was no one to judge me, no one to demand anything of me, no one to disappoint me. I devoted myself to exploring, without hurry or fixed direction. Every street led to a new discovery. Floating gardens filled with flowers that gave off a soft glow, squares with fountains that danced to invisible music, and infinite libraries whose books seemed to contain all the secrets of the universe. Each place was more beautiful than the last, and I felt like an enchanted child, unable to satisfy my curiosity. As I wandered through the city, I noticed I felt neither hunger nor fatigue. My body felt light, as though freed from physical limitations. Time seemed not to exist. Godziny, dni albo lata mogą mijać, a wszystko pozostaje równie doskonałe. Miasto nie zmienia się, zawsze promienne, zawsze zachęcające do dalszego marszu. Myślałem o swoim dawnym życiu, lecz wspomnienia były mgliste, jakby należały do kogoś innego. Moja żona, moja córka, mój ojciec, laboratorium. Wszystko zniknęło w oddali, nie mogąc się do mnie zbliżyć. Nie tęskniłem za nimi. Po raz pierwszy nie myślałem o nikim innym. Było tylko miasto, dar, którego nigdy wcześniej nie znałem. Każdego dnia znajdowałem coś nowego. Teatr, w którym cienie opowiadały historie bez aktorów. Punkt widokowy, z którego mogłem zobaczyć nieskończony horyzont barw. Albo jezioro, którego wody odbijały nie moje odbicie, lecz obrazy światów, których nigdy nie widziałem. Miasto wydało się żywe, stworzone dla mnie, odpowiadające na moje pragnienia, zanim jeszcze je wypowiedziałem. Szczęście, które czułem, było czyste, bez cienia. Nie było strachu, nie było niepokoju, nie było żalu. Miasto dało mi wszystko, czego kiedykolwiek pragnąłem. Wolność, piękno i spokój. There was no room for the pain people cause, nor for the complications of life. Here everything was perfect, and I was home. I never stopped to think about what I had left behind. The idea of waking up, of returning to my previous life, never crossed my mind. Why would I go back? The city was everything I needed. Every corner was an adventure, every moment a wonder. I felt complete, as though I had finally found my place in the universe. I must have died while I slept, because I never woke again. In this fantastical city, I found the peace the world had never given me.